Entrepreneurship education is on the rise as universities adapt to changing demands of students who want experiential learning and tangible skills.
2005, there were about 3,000 entrepreneurship centers in the world. The most recent number I saw was 30,000. So there's like a huge push for entrepreneurship in the university realm.
In this founder interview, we'll hear from OpenOcean founder Logan Higuera about technologies that are revolutionizing collegiate entrepreneurship centers.
What we decided to do is just all record a 60-second pitch, submitted them and started voting on each other's. Well, that was really cool. Is there anything like that out there where entrepreneurs could pitch to other people, maybe looking for co-founders or investment?
Logan will share the story of launching a startup literally from a dorm room and building it into critical infrastructure for entrepreneurship programs, instruction, mentorship, and pitch events across the country.
Something that you can't really scale, the mentoring, the resources, the networks, they weren't doing it at scale. So that was the big main pivot of going from a platform that was going to serve all of the entrepreneurs in the world to help these organizations maximize our impact.
Be sure to listen to the end to hear how no-code development platforms are paving the way for students to launch tech startups with any level of coding experience and to thrive as tech founders. Let's get into it. Greetings, Dr. John, Entreprofessor here, and I have a special guest today, the founder of OpenOcean, a tech startup in the edtech space. Logan Higuera, welcome to the channel. Really glad you're here, Logan.
Hey, John. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm honored to be a part and talk to your subscribers and all the students listening.
Awesome. Well, good. Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are and what your startup's about?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Logan Higuera. I originally came from Massachusetts. I'm down here in Tampa, Florida now. So I'm a recent graduate of the University of Tampa's entrepreneurship program. Over the past few years since I graduated, I've just kind of dove into all things startups. So as we mentioned, I have my own startup, OpenOcean, which we can get into in a little bit. I do coaching and consulting with another company called Plan Your Start. I recently joined a group called Venturous that does venture scouting for basically connecting early stage ventures that are coming out of universities primarily to venture capital. And so, yeah, I just kind of do all kinds of things with the startup world, and I love it. That's kind of what I live, eat, and breathe.
That's awesome. Well, take us back to the beginning, and I don't know, maybe it's even pre-OpenOcean. So, but whenever you first realized you had that spark, you're ready to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a founder, what was it that really got those wheels turning, and what were some of the first things that you did?
Yeah. I was actually talking to somebody recently about this. So I don't think I really knew until I was maybe 16 or 17 that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, or even what the word entrepreneur was. It kind of, I was in the age where Shark Tank got popular when I was in high school. So that was when everyone started learning about entrepreneurship, I think. But if I think back into my really early elementary school days and stuff, I was always the kid that was going to the school store and buying out whatever erasers or pencils or whatever I thought were cool, and then reselling them to my friends. So I always had this kind of hustle, kind of flipping mentality, and that progressed into street clothes and just all kinds of stuff as I grew up and went through high school. So that was really my view on entrepreneurship. It was just kind of the raw supply and demand side of it, how you can kind of make things more appealing to people by making them seem more limited. And I just thought that was cool, how you could manipulate it almost. So that was kind of my dip into it. And then I guess the second part of that, the progression, was when I was in high school, most of my jobs were in the service industry, in hospitality. So I worked at a variety of different restaurants and hotels and stuff. And really the people in my small hometown that I looked up to were the restaurant owners and the people that were kind of leading that industry. I just saw how much like fun it was. I kind of always loved like being in the hustle and bustle of like going home at that after like a good night with like a lot of tips, and just like the whole aspect of the service industry was really fun to me. So that was really what I thought entrepreneurship was before I got to college.
Nice. So tell us about OpenOcean. Like, just give us a quick. You got your elevator pitch. What's the 30-second value pitch for OpenOcean?
Yeah, so OpenOcean is a startup support management system. So essentially, we're a platform for organizations that support entrepreneurs. We basically help them manage all of the different educational content, resources, mentoring, events, pitch competitions, anything they're doing to help support those entrepreneurs and their businesses to succeed. We manage that for them.
Nice. So what was the moment when you realized there's a problem here that I think maybe I could fix? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll try and like give the quick snapshot because as I think you and I know, like these progressions and pivots actually in real life take a long time. But um, originally, it kind of started out of my class project. So I think I mentioned earlier I was an entrepreneurship major, um, and in the class that I was in, it was like the capstone new venture class where we come up with a business idea with a group. Um, and essentially, our group, we had this problem where each of us wanted to use our own business idea. And so we were trying to figure out whose we were going to go with. No one was really budging. And I think one of the girls in the group was like, well, what if we just all vote? And so what we decided to do is just all like record a 60-second pitch that was just like, hey, this is my idea and this is why I think we should use that for the project. And then as we all did that and kind of submitted them and started voting on each other's, we all kind of like had this feeling like, well, that was really cool. Like, is there anything like that out there where entrepreneurs could like pitch to other people, maybe looking for co-founders or investment or whatever? And I think it's important at the time. This is like right when TikTok was like coming out. So we're like, whoa, what if there was like a TikTok where we could pitch our business ideas and then we
Nice.
could get investment from like either angel investors or VCs or find co-founders or whatever we needed for our startup. We could pitch it and get that help. Um, so that was kind of like the first version of what OpenOcean initially was. Fast forward a little bit, I graduated. I was pretty much the only one on that team that was really interested in continuing it. I was also the only one staying here in Tampa. Um, so I just like got like obsessed and started trying to figure out what was like the best way to do this. And I got pretty hung up on this like the age old statistic that we always hear of like how many startups fail, that like 80 or 90% of startups fail. And so I kind of made that my mission at that point of, all right, how can I build a startup that reduces that like helps other startups succeed? Um, and it was kind of like a self problem too, because like I wanted to I had just graduated from a school for entrepreneurship, and all of my friends and like my family and everyone were like always coming to me with like business ideas. And they're like, hey, like, how can I do this? And on one side, I knew like how to create business plans and all of that, but I also knew that's not going to like make a company succeed. So I was trying to figure out like how could I apply this knowledge that I just got with like all these different ideas that people keep bringing to me, and like how can I just like help them do it rather than like doing it myself, because I don't want to like take on 100 new business ideas. Um, and so that's where I went and wanted to build a platform for entrepreneurs to like basically help them build their business without failing. Um, and really, when I know we wanted to talk about pivots, so this was like the big main pivot that happened for me was as I was doing that, I started talking to a lot of different entrepreneurship centers and just entrepreneur support organizations. And really my goal at the time was to talk to these organizations and find out like what they did to help entrepreneurs succeed. So that was like my whole objective, was to just be like, okay, like what are they doing to help entrepreneurs succeed? And can I take that and like build that into a platform to do that myself, basically. Um, and the more and more that I kept having those conversations, first I realized that like a lot of what led to that success was something that you can't really like scale super easily. So it's like the mentoring, the like resources, the kind of network. So these were things that were like tied to that organization. That was kind of like their secret sauce in a lot of cases. Um, so I was either going to have to like hire a 100,000 mentors to make this work and like find a bunch of resources, or what I ended up thinking about was, could we just partner with them? And then the other thing that I noticed at that time, where all these organizations were doing those things, but they weren't like super great at doing them. And so they weren't doing it at scale. They were always saying, yeah, well, really when the entrepreneurs come to me, like I help them myself. And I'm like, okay, so like how many can you help? And they're like, well, I wish I could help more, but really I can only help one at a time, or like something along those lines. So I realized pretty quickly that these organizations were somewhat limited in what they could do to help entrepreneurs by the number of like people and resources they had. So that was the big main pivot of going from a platform that was going to serve all of the entrepreneurs in the world to, okay, can we help these organizations that help entrepreneurs, and then like maximize our impact by kind of like partnering with them and leveraging what they've already built and created themselves.
Yeah, it's almost, I think Eric Ries would call that a zoom in pivot, where you went from the kind of a larger universe to a something more specific.
Exactly.
Actually takes me right to, I wanted to talk a bit about who your target customer is, who your ideal perfect customer is. Maybe like explain for anyone who doesn't know what an entrepreneurship center is, like what is that? And then who's that persona that would really look at what you have and say, oh, that is going to really be a game changer for me.
Yeah, no, it's a it's a good question. I always forget that like I live in such a super niche that like most people don't know what that is. But yeah, so really, it actually started a bit more broad, and as you said, I try to like keep niching and zooming in on it. It started with just entrepreneurship support organizations. So there's like a ESO is like the abbreviation for those organizations, and that basically captures incubators, accelerators, and like small business centers, all these different types of organizations. And ultimately, if you don't know what those are, the on a basic level, what they do is they provide resources and like pool together things to help entrepreneurs get their businesses started and growing. So usually what that looks like is some type of mentor or coach that they give you, access to like working space, like printers, Wi-Fi, just like really basic stuff like that. Sometimes it's like discounted subscriptions, pro bono lawyers or accountants. So there's like a variety of different things that those organizations can provide. Um, and then really what I began focusing on more and more were the university entrepreneurship centers that were essentially doing the same thing, but specifically for undergraduate, usually, and graduate students at that university. So they're helping these students who are either studying entrepreneurship or not studying entrepreneurship, who are trying to get their business off the ground. Ideally, in most cases, I think before they graduate, so that they have something to do rather than having to go get a job before graduation.
Yeah.
So that's been my really like main ideal target customer. I think because of like how we've built the platform to be more educationally focused, it's been probably like the best fit to how we're doing things.
Yeah, I really like the way you kind of distinguish between an entrepreneurship center in an academic or university setting versus the similar kinds of resources that are available to entrepreneurs anywhere. A lot of times when someone's saying, hey, I've got a business idea, where should I start? A lot of times that's where I really begin. Like, hey, there's lots I could share with you, but before any of that, go find, there are so many free resources available, whether it's the state small business association or organizations like SCORE, or there's different incubators and accelerators, a lot of cities that have a startup scene, and it can be a great place for someone who's really thinking about an idea but really doesn't have a lot of business background. Like, how do I get started? But students in particular, these entrepreneurship centers in schools really seem to be on the rise, and I think you can probably share more about that. But like you said, students are in this great place where if they're going to start a business, they've got a roof over their head, they've got their meals covered, they got insurance covered. You're doing schoolwork, but it can be a great time to test out a startup when the stakes are fairly low. But what's been your experience like? Have you seen are more of these types of centers popping up? What are you seeing changing in the universities as it relates to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess a quick backstory. The reason I went to the University of Tampa was because it was one of the, like, I think I was applying to 10 or 12 schools when I was in high school. And there were only three that had entrepreneurship as like a degree. And of those, not, I think only two, so two out of those three had an entrepreneurship center, which meant that they didn't just teach you like the theoretical part of entrepreneurship, but they had like co-curricular and extracurricular things that will help you like actually launch. So that was like the thing that pretty much sold me on why I wanted to go to my school. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of schools. So I don't know the like up to date statistic, but in like the early 2000s, I think it was like 2005, there were about 3,000 entrepreneur entrepreneurship centers in the world, like globally. And the most recent number I saw was there's 30,000. So there's like a huge growth of these
Wow.
centers and a push for entrepreneurship in the university realm. And I think it's I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I think it's really cool because what's happening in like this day and age and like our generation, I see a lot of people my age and people younger than me that are changing that mindset of like, do I even need to go to college? Is this some like, is it worth the investment for me? And I think that's like a more and more valid question. And really, it's something that I think a lot of these universities can really show value in by saying, hey, we're not just going to give you like a piece of paper, but we're going to give you like real world experience, something that you can like actually build a business with is what I think the end goal is for a lot of people that are contemplating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe just as a side note, what advice would you give to students who are thinking about a business, or just how would you suggest to them to like get the most out of entrepreneurship resources that are available to them while they're at school?
Yeah. And I think like you hinted on earlier, like it's literally the best possible time to start something. Like you have in most cases you have like most of your bills covered, or at least like you're getting loans, so you're like in a standstill area where you don't have to pay all these different bills and you don't have things coming at you, and there's no like urgency for you to like make this happen right now. So it's the best time to just try something and start something. And I think what is awesome about it, just as like an added bonus, is the fact that it's the best like experience you can get possible. So people always tell me that I talk to, like when they find out that I've started a business like right out of college, they're like, "Wow, you can probably do anything, right?" Like, and I'm like, I mean, I don't think about it like that, but when I do start to think about it, I'm like, yeah, well, I do marketing, I do sales, I built it. I like you have to learn 100 different skills and be a little bit of a generalist when you're building your own business, and you're more motivated when it's your own business than you'd ever be for any other company. So even if like worst case scenario, it all fails, like it doesn't work, you're still graduating college with like basically 100 different internships and all of these skills that make you really desirable for any employer nowadays that says, hey, this person is a self-starter, they're adaptable, they can do whatever, and they can make the most out of any situation. So I think that's one of the coolest things about getting in. And then to answer your question, I think just do it. Like that's the best way to do it, is like, even if you don't have a good idea, if you start to get involved, what happens a lot of times in the ones that I've seen is there's always different students and people that are kind of hanging out at their centers, or involved in it, and the clubs that are kind of correlated to it. So there's always people that are interacting there. And I think ultimately that's just going to lead you in the right path. Like it's all serendipity. Like you're either going to join a team, or somebody's going to bring up some idea that you never thought of that leads you on the path to your own idea. So I think whatever it is, just like kind of try to immerse yourself, and like let the flow take you.
Nice. So let's go back to OpenOcean a little bit. So value proposition, how do what that just means, where do you address a pain that someone's having, or help them achieve a gain? That's that concept that we all learn when we're studying entrepreneurship. What would you say the value proposition is of OpenOcean when you find that person that's running an entrepreneurship center, or really a stakeholder? Like what is it for them that says, just really drives them to say, tell me more. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. That's a tough question. I don't know if like we have a fully defined one, and this is kind of part of the process. But what I like to say are pretty much two main things. So the first one is essentially just the consolidation and centralization of all of these different things they're doing. So when we talk about like mentoring, and resources and events and pitch competitions and programs, those are all like different things that usually require like a different platform or medium or whatever. So just to give an example, if I'm a student, I have like a napkin idea written down, and I want to like start this business, I would go into a center and talk to whoever is going to talk to me. And usually what would happen in most centers is they'll they'll give you some consultation, they'll learn about your idea, they'll maybe give you some homework, tell you to come back, and then you just like go in this process of working with them, and hopefully doing what they told you, and then coming back and seeing if that worked or if that was right. um, and then you end up just getting introduced to mentors via email, and then like have to schedule those, and then they come back and they tell you, oh, you need to go and like get this resource, which we have from the university, but you got to go over to this department to get it. And then, oh, by the way, next week we have like a new speaker coming in who's talking about that topic. So you should definitely come to that. It's on Eventbrite, like go sign up there. And then like maybe 2 weeks later, hey, like you've been doing awesome. Like you should apply to this pitch competition that we're using Reviewer for. So basically in that process of maybe a few months, an entrepreneur is going to see 5 or 6 different platforms and have that data spread across those different platforms. And so first of all, for the student, that makes navigating that process like not super user friendly. So like starting a business is hard already, so you want to make it as easy and like seamless as possible for them to like feel good about what they're doing, because there's a lot of setbacks and hurdles that are going to discourage them no matter what. So that's the first part. And then from the other perspective, from like the university's perspective, the thing that's important to them is usually tracking and reporting all of this stuff. So usually at the end of the year, the stakeholders, whoever's funding the center, or the deans, whoever's involved in the leadership, usually wants to know, hey, how many entrepreneurs did you guys help out this year? Like what were they able to do? Did they hire anyone? What were their revenues? How many coaches or mentors did they even engage with? And like, were those conversations helpful? So like all of those different things that we talked about, they're going to try and go into those 5 or 6 different platforms again, and like piece together all of those touch points, and try and tie it back to the individual founders. So basically that centralization piece of keeping it all seamless for the entrepreneur also has a double benefit of keeping all of that data tied together and easily kind of outputable to the organization when they need it. And that was the whole data metrics reporting side was something that I really didn't even like think about or care about for the longest time. That ended up being like one of those biggest value props to the people I was talking to, because at the end of the year, that's like one of their biggest pain points is trying to get and capture all of that important information, because that's going to depend on if their sender continues to get funding, if they get the new grant, if they are able to like hire new people or continue operations, or if they get shut down. So that's like a really important pain point for them that I never even like thought of until I got into this space.
Yeah. Actually, tell us a little bit about how you discovered that. Cause I think you're starting to get into like the whole customer development process and like, what was like the moment when you realized, oh, wait, this is a thing too. And then what's some of the data that you found around it?
Yeah. I won't say which center this was. But it was actually kind of frustrating when I found out. So I had this whole perspective of like I'm a recent grad founder, like I want to build a platform that makes it better and easier for founders to like start and get access to the help they needed. And
Yeah.
so to me, that was like everything. I was like, we need to have a better way of helping these entrepreneurs. Um, and this one organization in particular was like, yeah, like we get it, that's great. But like really at the end of the day, all we care about are like being able to report that stuff. And so
Mhm.
like we could care less if the platform like does any of these things. We really just want to be able to have a way to see how many companies came through here, how many mentors are involved, how much capital they raise, like blah blah blah. They literally gave me like an actual list of all of these different things that they have to report back to their dean that they wanted this platform to show.
Yeah.
And so at that one, like I still was just like super hard headed. I was like, no, like I don't care about that. I'm gonna keep building a platform that's gonna help entrepreneurs. So it over like a couple of months, I kept hearing more and more about this reporting thing. I think because coincidentally it was like the spring semester, and a lot of that happens going into the summer when they have to like report that stuff. And so it really just became very like blatantly obvious that not only was that important, but there was a way to like tie it in. Like they're tied together is like if I want to build a platform that does all of these things, I need to make sure that it's tracking all of these things, because that's how I'm going to sell it to the university after, because like able to get what I want out of the platform and like follow the mission of helping entrepreneurs, but I'm only able to do that if I'm like giving this like other kind of tied in value to the people that I'm selling it to.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting the way you really discovered, you really have a kind of a multiple customer segment model where you have, in a sense, the beneficiaries of this are the student founders that are, getting a much better experience. They have access more easily accessible to resources. They can kind of chart their path a little bit easier. And then at the same time, you have those that are running the centers who are having to justify the enormous amount of investment that's gone into those centers and the continuing investment to those centers, showing that it's achieving outcomes and those kinds of things. And so you have two very different stakeholders with very different priorities, and their interests are heavily interconnected, which makes a really powerful value prop in a lot of ways. I think that's really interesting that you kind of have brought that together and seeing kind of your two different customer segments.
Yeah. And I mean like I said before, it's cool to see it now, but that progression of figuring that out and like weaving those things was not that obvious for probably like 6 to 9 months of me talking to centers to kind of piece it together. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's dive into software development for a few minutes. And it sounds like your customer development started reprioritizing your development backlog to some degree. Tell us a little bit about that process. Like, tell us about the things that you were thinking about doing at that point that you were thinking were the highest priorities, and now you're discovering this. You're getting this new input from customers, and then what? How did you decide like what was going to move so that you could start to add more reporting, more data tracking, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I think really what the first thing was that you always like expect a lot more usage out of like something you built than what it's actually going to get. So that was probably like the first like hard realization for me. It was like, oh, like I spent so much time on this platform, and like we're running these pilots now, and then like I'm able to like see on the back end, oh well, only like half of the entrepreneurs even ever signed in, and then the ones that did, like there's maybe a few that really used it, but then most of them like didn't really stay on it. And so there was, I say that because there was like this constant ebb and flow and like learning process of like how can we first make a platform that does what I initially intended it to, like help these entrepreneurs start their businesses. And then second, like how do we capture that data that's, again, back to the second point, really important for those organizations to have. Um, and so in the beginning, it was a lot of just, all right, we're going to put the content, we're going to put the resources, we're going to put all of these things there for the entrepreneurs to take advantage of. And then I had to really adjust how we were doing that, because the initial thing was, hey, put everything there, give them as much stuff as possible, and let them take advantage of it. And then what we realized over time was it's actually a lot better to kind of focus in on like what exactly those entrepreneurs need help with right now, and like steer them in the right direction instead. And so there was always this process of starting really big, of like these are all the things we can do, and then narrowing down to like, all right, instead of doing all these things, we need to just do this one thing really well. And so that's usually what has just happened over and over again in our development process. It was just, all right, we need to do 100 different things to help these entrepreneurs, but what one thing can we focus on first? And then as we did that, now their entrepreneurs are asking for this, so we do that, and it kind of just grew from there.
Yeah. So, what were some of the things that you immediately prioritized in terms of like performance metrics? So I heard two different groups there. You've got the center directors are looking for data about usage. You've got students, are kind of haphazard and whether they're using or not. What are the things that you measured to determine like we're getting traction with centers, and then also we're getting kind of utilization from students, and then maybe along with that, like what was the hustle and grind to like driving performance in those two categories?
Yeah. I think one of the main things, especially for the centers, was always engagement. um like how much engagement the platform had, and that could mean like how many people are signing up, how many people are like registering for events, scheduling with mentors, interacting on the news feed. So that was something that was really important to the organizations. And then on the flip side, for the entrepreneurs, it I mean, this is the part that I'm still not fully sure of, but I always think about like myself and the other entrepreneurs I know, and the ones I've actually like have interviewed about this. And to them, it's just how can I grow my company? Like what can I do to like get to that next level? So how many iterations, how many pivots, how many like milestones have I hit? Um, and again, I've just tried to like connect the values for each of them at each stage. And so to do that accurately, the hard part was that the entrepreneurs didn't really care about engagement. They just wanted to build their business. And so I had to find ways to tie their engagement to their business's like growth and progression. And one of the like clearest ways to do that was through structured programming. So like with a lot of these incubators, accelerators, these university programs, they have cohorts that they run where there's a group of students and they kind of push them through like a 10-week cohort, and that's like at the end of it they're going to have a demo day or something where their business is now hit this milestone. Um, and so that was one of the big things that we tried. We've been trying, and we've now like succeeded in showcasing how if you can get all of the content programming onto the platform, now it's a lot easier for you to ask the students to engage with it, because to them that's how they're going to get to that point of my business is going to the next level by completing that program and all of the steps of that program. And then by having them go through the program, first of all, they're on the platform, but now they're also asking for feedback from the mentors and coaches along the way. They're talking to their peers in the cohort about like, hey, how did you do your market research? Or like how did you structure your pitch deck? Like, and they're just interacting naturally now in the flow of the program. And so that's how we basically approached it.
So talk a little bit about the stats, like how many universities and colleges are using it at this point? How many users do you have on the platform? Some of those kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about your progress to date.
Yeah. So we just got our 15th customer. So that's 15 organizations that are using it. Not all of them are university entrepreneurship centers. So a few of those are just incubators. And I think last time I checked, we just passed 1,200 users. So it's not like a crazy Facebook type of high growth. And I think like to us, what's really important is not just like the huge number of users, but more so like what's happening out of these different organizations and like what companies are being built from those.
Yeah, that's great. So talk to me about I guess we'll call it the sales funnel to get an organization to the point that they sign up and start using it.
Yeah. um, that's probably the hardest, most like biggest learning curve for me as a founder for sure. Yeah, I don't think I am very good at sales. I don't think like that's like my original skill set, or best skill set, but it's something that you have to do as a founder, and that's something that I've heard over and over again is like founder-led sales, especially in the beginning, is kind of something you can't really avoid. Um, and so for us, like the sales cycle, it can be kind of crazy. So that's the biggest challenge working with higher ed in general, is that they're super bureaucratic. There's all kinds of hurdles to jump through. Even if somebody really loves our platform, they need to get approval for funding in most cases. They will need to have us go through like a whole like IT audit to make sure that we're compliant with their university. There's a lot of Most of our university clients have us go through like what we call a VPAT, which makes sure that your platform is accessible to people who are blind or deaf or have different like impairments. So there's like all these hidden hurdles and hoops you have to jump through that I never would have known, or didn't even know until like I was all the way at the end of, or what I thought was the end of the sales process with certain customers, just to find out that we still have a lot of work to do. So yeah, no, it's definitely a different view of the startup that isn't as like sexy as you usually think. Like I love talking about building it and like working with customers and all of the fun stuff, but what doesn't really get talked about is maybe the 6 to 9 month cycle of like connecting with new universities and going through the process of getting approved by their entire team, and then all of the IT and budget and all of these different stakeholders, to finally get through, at that point, and hoping that it lines up with when they get their new budget, which in most cases is like the summer for universities. So it's a kind of crazy part of the journey that I didn't know at all.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that you've been able to get to the right people and get into conversation with them? Have you had some channels that have been particularly useful?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of the ways that I think we met. So, I think one of the coolest parts about our specific space is that, most of the people are like you, that they want to help entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs coming from academia. So that was something that I always had going for me, was that I really resembled their ideal target customer, or person that they like to help the most, at least, which is that like student entrepreneur. Um, and so that's a part that I've always used to my advantage, is engaging with, directors, with program managers, with people in the space who, really genuinely want to help student entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs. And that kind of gets at least my foot in the door. And so that's led me to start, connecting with all kinds of people in academia, but also, going to conferences like GCEC, where we met. So that, like, in our world, it's not a huge world. There's not that many university entrepreneurship centers, but what's cool about it is it's a pretty tight knit community. And so once I talked to some, they introduced me to others, and, they tell me about these conferences, and, there's just a lot of really connected components that makes it really a little bit easier for me to know who I can talk to and who's in the space, and how to approach them.
Yeah. Nice. So looking back at it all, you've kind of gone from maybe almost dorm room startup, or like soon after school, starting up, creating a software platform, getting universities to sign up, getting student founders and other founders to use the platform. Just looking back at it now, what would you do different if you were starting from scratch today? How would you approach it?
Yeah. I kind of alluded to this, but I didn't give the full details. So I would say that the number one thing that I would have done, not differently, but just earlier, was to start doing, like the building of the platform, myself, and like, not, I guess, not being worried about having a polished product to show. So I had this like idea where I needed to find either co-founders or get investment or hire a company to build out the platform. And so I just had this idea of like, it needed to have like an awesome product to even like begin selling it, or pitching it to people. And that was like the furthest thing from the truth possible. Like, I'm glad that I didn't like raise capital or get co-founders or anything like that, because that probably would have like ruined everything. Um, but yeah, so I spent probably, I think, like 8 months or so trying to do that, trying to first see if I should be raising capital, and then like hiring a company, or hiring some developers to join the team. After not doing that, because I realized that I didn't really have anything that a venture capitalist would want to invest in, which would be like a product or a team or experience. I didn't really have any of that. I was like, all right, maybe I can find some co-founders. And long story short, I ended up finding some guys to help me build the platform. And what that led me to was me actually building out the prototype of the platform, just like the wireframe of it, using a tool called Bubble, which is a no-code platform. And so I basically was getting frustrated with like how long it was taking them to like do really simple, in my head, things, and like have just like a very basic version of the platform that I could start to like show to potential customers. Um, and in that, I just started to like say, hey, what if I build out at least what it's like supposed to look like and do, and then let you guys build it from there. And then as I was doing that, I think I always say I got lucky with Bubble because they've evolved so much over the past 3 years that I was able to just say, hey, well, I'm building it and like it's actually functionable and it's scalable now. And so there wasn't any need for the developers actually. So I ended up just going that route, kept using Bubble to build out the entire platform. And so I always think if I were to have done that 6 months earlier, like it just would have changed how much faster I could have got to market, and then ultimately how much faster I could have iterated, because the whole next year was really, the platform is completely different from that first version to that last version. So the quicker you can get out there and show something to your customers and get feedback and iterate and change it, that's really where you start to find what problems you're actually solving and like how you're actually going to deliver value.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the no code platforms are just such a game changer. Think about like, Bubble and Glide and Jotform, Adalo, Graphite. You see these no code platforms just really putting the ability to get an app out there for that prototype phase, that MVP, minimum viable product phase, so easily, even if you don't have strong technical resources. I know that's one thing, and just seeing some of the things you've been doing, and just seeing some of the talks you do. I've just been really impressed with just the breadth of knowledge you have around these no code platforms and how you've been able to apply them. So I really see the power of that in your experience and that of others I've seen use them.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I can't describe to people how like awesome and grateful I am to have just like stumbled upon Bubble and like gone into that no code learn like exploratory phase, because Bubble basically showed me how powerful this specific platform for me could be, but it also made me realize that, hey, if you're building a mobile app, maybe it's a Dalo, or like there's all kinds of different platforms that are best geared towards different MVPs or products. And it allows people that don't have any technical background to get something out there. And that's the biggest part that is hard to overcome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll be sure to post some links in the description here with a lot of those different no code platforms. If for anyone who's not familiar with them, it could be a really powerful resource. So I would say at this point, I'll bet anyone watching this would love to see the platform. Do you mind showing it to us, giving us a really brief kind of flyover of your platform and how it works?
Yeah, sure. I can show a quick demo. All right. Can you see that?
I can. There we go.
All right, sweet. So basically, this is what the student or the founder sees on their side. So I think I talked about earlier, the part where we really focused in on was the programming aspect, and how we lead the entrepreneurs through their journey like that. So essentially, if they're in an accelerator program like you see here, they just have a breakdown of all the different things that they're going to be doing while they're in that program. In each of these, they have like a variety of different things that are going to help guide them. So I'll just give like a quick example of, if they're doing customer discovery, and part of that program is on customer discovery, then they're going to see, hey, these are the videos you should be watching. Here's the things you should be reading, the tools that are going to help you do customer discovery. And so it really guides them through that entire process. And I just realized it probably didn't even share the right tab, but let's see. There we go.
Oh
So like
yeah. Well, and
videos.
I love that you've really structured this around the entrepreneurial process. Like, if someone's teaching entrepreneurship to those that are also founders, they're not just seeing like, here's some things you should do. It's they're seeing that process in a very tangible way, and connecting a lot of the learning material and the steps they should be taking. I just really like the way that flows. That's one of the things that really struck me the first time I saw the platform.
Yeah. And to your point, like that's really what we wanted for the entrepreneurs, to make all these things actionable. So like as they're going through this, they're supposed to be filling out, okay, how am I gonna define my customer? What is my hypothesis for customer discovery? Who am I going to interview? So like all of these different things, we're really just breaking it down into tiny little bite-sized pieces, because starting a business is one of the hardest things you can do. And there's a million different things you have to do, but that's a lot less intimidating if we can just take it into little pieces and break it down to make it easier for them.
Yeah. It's like you're providing a framework and walking them through it at the same point. And I would think even an experienced founder would find this useful, because even if they're already aware that they need to take these steps, it's almost like the act of going through the steps really helps them to get organized. And like you said, I mean, I think this would also drive a lot of very rich data in terms of how deep founders are going in their creation. They're not just saying, "Hey, I've got a great idea. I created a logo and I threw up a landing page." You know, you can almost see from a data perspective all the different things that have happened along the way, which is really, really useful.
Yeah. And I would even expand on like what you just said. Is there's two things there. From the founder side, we we want accountability as founders. So it's not that like we don't want to do all this work. It's that we sometimes need to just like be held accountable and put on track. So that's
Yeah.
one of the things we're doing. We're also like gamifying it a little bit so that it's a little bit easier to keep going in the right direction even when things get tough. And yeah, like you said, from the other end, now if maybe you're an angel investor who's going to the demo day for this program, you're able to see the data of, hey, this is how much time and effort and energy and different like feedback and iterations and all of the work that went into this startup's journey so far. So they know it's not just something that some kid threw together really quickly and doesn't have any data behind it, but like they were actionably taking their time and thinking about each aspect of this. And now you can see that here.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Um, so yeah, and from the programming side of it, we also have, of course, like the different people in your community. So you can find all of the different coaches, mentors, other entrepreneurs. You can find them based on the type of support they can provide to you. Um, Also, like we mentioned earlier, there's different resources. So we've talked about no code tools. We have a bunch of different like built-in discounts for things like Adalo and Bubble, Airtable, all these different tools, AWS credits. So a lot of these things that are going to help startups. And these don't have to be specifically like the tools that I'm showing, but each different university can have their own added resources that may be specific to them. Um, and then also just a news feed where you can kind of interact with other people and see, hey, I'm looking for a co-founder, or does anyone know so and so who would be a good target customer for me to interview, or whatever it is. Maybe you have a pop-up shop or something. People can engage on the news feed here and kind of find the help they need that they may not have had already.
Yeah. And I heard you mention like events and pitching as well. So pitch contests, it sounds like you have the ability to kind of help organize that as well.
Yeah, so I don't think we have like a good example over here, but if there's like a pitch competition, you can enter it here, just fill out all of that information. And I think this one's blank, but I'll just show it anyway. So basically you submit whatever information for your pitch, your deck, any information. And then after you do that, you're able to see how many people looked at your pitch, the views, likes, if people are giving you grades. So like a lot of times what's happening is this is like a pitch competition. So there's going to be like 5 or 6 judges who are going to determine who wins. So you'll be able to see how many of those grade or how they graded your pitch and like give you feedback so that next time and going forward, you can improve it and keep building a better pitch, which is something that's pretty important for any startup to have.
Yeah, that's excellent. So if someone wanted to try this out or get familiar with it, what are some of the things that they might do to, to get involved? Like how, is it something where you would start with just kind of going through a demo like this, or are there some ways to test it? What's kind of your process when someone's really wanting to learn more about it?
Yeah. So I can give you like a page and a link, but yeah, I think the easiest way is to just hit me up. I have like a number of different ways you can schedule a demo with me. I keep my calendar pretty like open and public, so anyone can schedule a demo at any time. A lot of times we do like trials with other universities, so they can try out like a small program or do some different like a first pitch competition, so they can use the platform to get a feel for it and how it's going to work and if it's going to fit like the specific needs of their center or organization, before having to commit to it. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and we'll put all those links and your contact information below in the description as well. Maybe just before we wrap up, I'd love to just hear a success story. Tell me about a school that you started working with, and just how it played out and maybe impact on the entrepreneurship center as well as the students that are in the mix.
Yeah. So one that I heard pretty recently that was pretty cool. I just like I love like little niche things that are just you'd never think of them being successful. One of our customers, Quinnipiac University in Connecticut, I was talking to their center director, and she told me that one of their users built a dog food business. And I was just like, like, why would any student like think of a dog food business? But like it was a business that's like, I guess killing it now. Like they're actually thinking about like just selling it, exiting it, I think to like a private equity firm. And it was something that they started while they were a student. They were able to like get it up and running, figure out what they needed to do to like, I think like logistics and get like ingredients sourced, and I'm pretty sure they did like the full 9 yards of figuring out how to like
Nice.
create a good healthy dog food brand, which is just something that is really cool for me to hear because it's like I have dogs. I appreciate like that how like you want your dog to be healthy and like the food they're eating, and it's something that like is a part of my everyday life, but something I'd never like imagine that a student would be building on the other
Yeah.
end. So it's cool.
Yeah, well, that's great. It creates that platform, whatever the idea is, and it sounds like they found a niche, they found a need, and they built their business a lot like you did. So that's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what advice would you have for a young person who wants to be an entrepreneur, who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur? What are some of the things that you would give as advice as they get started?
Um, I always the number one advice I always say is to do as much possible customer discovery as you can. I think that it's the number one thing that any startup doesn't do enough of, and like I I would say I'm even, like, hypocritical myself, like, I feel like I could do more and more, and it's, like, something you should never stop, um, but not only doing it, but doing it the right way. So I think part of the problem is a lot of people think they're doing customer discovery when they just, like, talk to a bunch of people and, like, hear what they wanna hear, and that's, like, the exact opposite of what you wanna do. Like, you wanna not steer the people you're talking to in any direction or give them too much information. And so the hardest part about that is like going in with like somebody what it's somebody called it product amnesia to me. You basically want to like forget about your product, your idea, everything, just like get it out of your head and
Yeah.
go and talk to these customers and like really truly just listen and try to understand like what their problems are, how they do things, what does their day look like, everything you can possibly figure out about them and their specific like flow of what they're trying to do. And I think if you really commit to doing that, you'll find yourself building a much better business and product and solution than if you were to try and like keep selling and pushing what you have in your head.
Nice. Excellent. So what's next for OpenOcean?
Yeah. So we're hoping to just like keep growing at the rate we're at. It's I mentioned it's a slow sales cycle, so it took us a while to get to 15, but now that we got here, it's hopefully gonna keep getting easier to get more and more customers. We have more of a reputation now. We're doing cool things like this where we're talking to university educators, and just being a part of the space and the conversation is a huge part of our recent success. So we're hoping to start hiring some more full-time people soon, and keep building what we've been building, and improving what we can.
Yeah. How's AI playing into your future plans?
It's definitely going to play a part. We're still like keeping it on the down low how we're going to integrate it, but it's going to be a slow progression. So we're going to integrate in very small, seamless ways in the beginning, and then long term, we have like some ideas on how it could be a big main component of how our platform differentiates from our competitors.
Nice. Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I always like to ask, what is your favorite founder film?
Uh, um, the only one that really comes to mind is like The Wolf of Wall Street. I think that's like one of my favorite movies ever. It's probably not like a good message, right, or like anything that I would advise founders to do, but yeah, I think that's my favorite one.
Yeah, story's rough, story's gritty, but underneath it, a real founder entrepreneurship story there that definitely tracks. So that one has not made it onto my founders in film list yet, but and if you haven't seen it, I do a lot of shorts on founders in film and telling those stories. But definitely a great example of a true story founder that is made it into film. So that's a good
Yeah.
one. Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next with OpenOcean. I think you have a really interesting technology that definitely addresses a need in the market, and I really like the way you've described the value that you bring to these different user groups. So, really appreciate you being on the show today, and it's great to hear your story.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored and excited to be a part of it as well. So appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Well, like I tell every entrepreneur, keep going.